So tonight, I just want to introduce our speaker, right? So we have Mr. Hew, right? Who's the regional director of Cyclone Robotics. So tonight he will be sharing about how digitalization is transforming workplace. Yeah. So I'd like to welcome. Let's give him a big round of applause, everyone.
Thank you, David. Good evening. Yeah, great to see all of you here, and I'm sure you enjoyed the sumptuous dinner that we had. And I'm not sure how you're going to keep yourself awake. Right, sleeping time is coming soon. So anyway, honored to be here to share about digitalization. So before I start, I just want to play a slide right after this that relates to what David have just mentioned. So I'd like to check whether it's something that you can relate to. Can you see the slides? That is, who are we? The CEOs will all raise their hand. What do we want? AI. Right. And AI to do what? Nobody knows. Then, when do we want it? Right now. Is that something that you can relate to in your daily life, especially those who are working in the office? That's a reality today, right? I dare say this. A lot of people want AI without knowing what AI is. AI has replaced the word digitalization, right? That's good and bad. I would treat this session as more of sharing of knowledge and sharing of experience. When I spoke to quite a few IT companies recently and talk about, obviously, AI, we can't run away from that word AI. So the first thing that comes to mind is everybody said they want to talk about AI while they don't understand what AI is, which is fine, right? Even I don't really know AI enough, right? Just now I was having a conversation with David earlier. Seems like David knows more about AI than I do, right? He's probably even more credible than me to stand up here and share our experience with you. But back to the topic that I want to talk about. A lot of these tech companies says that everybody wants to talk about AI today. And eventually, when they went down the conversation, what the company needs are actually automation and digitalization, right? Not necessarily AI, right? But the good thing is it actually strikes a conversation. Prior to this, if you were to approach a prospect and talk about digitalization, there's no interest. A lot of them shoo you out the door and say, no, come back next time. I'm not ready for all this. Now, even they are not ready, they want to know about AI. So that's the benefit of it. But in reality, there's a lot of transformation that is going on in the workplace today. And that's the topic that we want to talk about, right? And I want to share with you what are the transformation that's happening, how are companies doing, which is very important, right? Do we want to do it in a big way? Do we want to do it in a smaller way? There's no right and wrong, but there are all different approaches when it comes to digitalization and transformation of workplace. Okay, so the topic that we want to focus on, bear with me here, is embrace the power of intelligent automation. Earlier, David used the word hyper-automation. Now I'm introducing another word called intelligent automation. What's my purpose? Am I trying to confuse the hell out of you? Throwing more and more terms at you? It's actually the contrary. What I'm trying to say here is don't worry about all this. First lesson, yeah? Don't worry about all this word hyper-automation, intelligent automation. I'll tell you even more terms later like machine learning, large language model. Everybody will bombard you with a lot of technical terms. Probably 3 months from now, there'll be more terms that will come up. Don't worry about those things. Focus on what you need to achieve, right? So that's where we're going to go to in the next 30 minutes. So first thing first is, what is the current situation globally when it comes to digitalization? So some of the statistics and some of the statements that we have seen out there is unaudited, yeah? Not audited by us, but it's somewhere around there. For example, I think what's significant is around 90% or 89% of organizations have started to adopt what they call a digital-first strategy. What does that mean? That means operationally, the first thing that they look at is, can we digitalize this? I'll come back to that later. Yeah? Or whenever they want to do any new business, can they do digital business? A lot of organizations are moving into digital business these days, especially AI business. Right? There's so many out there until we lost count of all these new businesses that are cropping up. But equally as important is 50% of all these CEOs believe that digitalization can actually significantly help them to grow. Not just solving current problems, but looking at future opportunity. Because that's the sexy term, not only sexy term, but that's where the opportunities are. Right? So now let's look at the current issue that is that business are facing in terms of driving, of course, efficiency. Everybody wants to have very efficient operation to lower their cost of business, plus increasing the top line, trying to grow their business. So what are the things that they can do? What are the things that are hampering them from growing? First is limited visibility. In no particular order, yeah? Limited visibility. What does that mean? A lot of organizations today still, no matter how big they are running, if I may use the word, blind. That means they don't know what's happening in the organization. Keep the finger crossed, hopefully nothing bad happens. Right? There's no data that's helping them to find what's going on, other than probably a set of accounts. At the end of every month, they see the set of accounts. How much money are they making? How much money are they losing? Right? But they don't know where the problems are, other than what they can potentially hear from the ground. Right? There's no real data to help them with that. Even for those that have data are very silo. What does that mean? You have data sitting in your spreadsheets, you have data sitting in your email, you have data sitting in your Word document, you have data that's sitting in some of the systems that you have developed, but over the years you realize that you have 50 systems in the organization, all hosting some of the data. Right? So what do you do with all this data? Because for data to be meaningful information, it needs to be linked, it needs to be interpreted. Right? So a lot of organizations are having this issue today. And I mentioned about some of these organizations, over time they realized that there are 50 systems, it's just a hypothetical number, 50 systems in the organization. These are legacy systems. Over time, when you have needs and you find that your current system are not able to handle it, you get a programmer and develop a new system, or you buy additional add-on systems. So you end up with multiple systems. A classic example would be for those who are working in a banking system. A bank have very old legacy systems, right? And they have tons of these systems. So what do you do with all these systems now that it becomes legacy system? And of course, a lot of organizations are still having a lot of manual processes, right? You hire armies of people to do all these processes itself. So as your business grow, you need more and more human beings to do all this processing. So that becomes a challenge. Right? And for those who are in the regulated industry, as I mentioned, in the banks, in the insurance companies, they have a lot of compliance requirements. Even the telco companies have a lot of compliance requirements. What does that mean? They would need to furnish a lot of data to the regulators like the Bank Negara of the world, the Central Bank of the world, the MCMC of the world, who regulate all these industries. So all this data needs to be submitted timely and efficiently. Because these are actually, in a way, you look at it as cost, right? Because they are not helping you in your business, but you have to comply in order to keep your license. So there are a lot of manual effort that needs to go in here. And of course, inefficient workflows. There are a lot of organizations that have been living on very old workflow. It was very relevant then, but now it's irrelevant, but they still continue with the workflow because nobody have the time capacity to start looking at the workflow and optimize it, right? And of course, due to data silos, there are a lot of organizations end up with data overload as well. Not because they are lack of data, but they have a lot of data. But again, the question is, are these data meaningful for the organization? It's a big question mark. Right? And of course, limited resources. Malaysia has 33 million population, I think. That's about there. And of which around 14 million are in the workforce. 14 million is not a big number, right? So for Malaysia to grow as a country, for organization to grow, you need a lot of resources, human resources, especially, right? But how would you be able to get all these human resources to do higher value work when a lot of these employees or resources are sitting in front of the computer, punching away, keying in the orders every single day, right? Can give you an example. All of us are into e-commerce to a certain extent, as in we are buying things. How many of you have, in the early days, of course now it's much better, order certain goods and the goods never arrive, or the goods arrive only a few weeks after that? That's because a lot of this organization, it's very easy for them to jump onto the e-commerce bandwagon, right, to start advertising the products. But when the order came in 4 or 5 times than what they were used to before, they couldn't actually fulfill it because lack of resources, right? So these are very common challenges. Of course, staff attrition, right? I think staff attrition is an issue in every organization, whereby people are sick of doing the same thing. Again, like what David have mentioned, right? Every day you do the same thing, day in, day out. 6 months later, 1 year later, they say, forget it. It's too boring for me, and I want to move on to do something more interesting, right? Okay. So these are some of the challenges that a lot of organizations face. So now, moving on to intelligent automation, right? Although I did mention that, don't worry about some of these jargons, there are a lot of these jargons, but I still like to introduce some of it so that you can actually help you to understand a bit more what automation is about, yeah? Another term that I'm going to start introducing is RPA, Robotic Process Automation. Keep it there in your mind, enough, right? But what does that mean? Let me explain a bit more. It mimics how a human uses a computer. Like what David mentioned earlier. Early Monday morning, you open up your notebook, you start reading emails, you see invoices or purchase order that has been emailed to you, right? And then you say, wow, that's good, I'm getting orders. So the next 2 hours or 4 hours, have to continue to sit in front of the computer, load up the system, the company banking, financial system or ERP system, and start reading the PO and start keying in the orders, right? And of course, the more orders, the better in that sense. But the more orders means the more time you have to spend in front of the computer doing all these things. How do you like if there's a bot, a robot that is, who will read your emails for you, as what has been described earlier, and say, voila, there is a PO. Open up the PO and start keying into all this order into the backend system while you go out there, have your cup of coffee with the client and start gathering more orders, right? Instead of keep punching all these things in. That is an example of what robotic process automation can do. That is to help you to do some of this automated stuff, mundane stuff, right? Another example that is very easy, or probably the easiest to describe, is bank reconciliation. For those of you who are in finance, you will know that you will always have to match what all the financial transaction in your own company system versus the bank statements, right? It can be a very boring job, right? But you can get the bot to do it. The robot will go in and read your bank statement and start matching it against your financial system and throw out those that needs your intervention, that's to review and do a bit more analysis before you're able to reconcile. So these are the examples, yeah? But of course, with AI these days, it brings more cognitive capability. Prior to this, it's very rule-based. Robots are not as smart as us without training, right? You need to train the robots what to do. Literally go into the platform telling the robot, hey, Mr. Robot or Miss Robot, please go into this system and start reading this transaction. If you find a transaction that's 50 ringgit and find another one in another 50 ringgit, consider as match. You literally have to teach all these rules, yeah? But with AI, it brings more cognitive capability in the sense that sometimes AI are able to see there's a transaction that's 20 ringgit. There's transaction that's 30 ringgit. When I go into the banking system, I see a transaction that's 50 ringgit. I can't find one that's 20 ringgit, 30 ringgit. Is it a match? Possibly, right? So these are the AI capability that you can train the robot or the AI agent to start looking at this. Yeah, so they are able to look at something that's a bit more complex. And when you teach them to do this, then there is another term called machine learning, ML, right? So over time, the bot becomes more intelligent because they learn more and more possibility in terms of all this matching, then they'll put it into their database. So next time they don't have to think, is this right, is this wrong, because they have experienced it before. So it goes into their memory, right? And with all this, putting all this together, it becomes what we call as intelligent automation. Okay, so it's more intelligent in that sense, as compared to what David used earlier, the term called hyper-automation. Hyper-automation, as the word hyper, it means you do more automation than what you can possibly think of earlier. Yeah, but again, don't worry in terms of memorizing all this. I'm just telling you there are all these different terms that's being used. Yeah. So, but why is it important? It's a natural evolution of the world economy, natural evolution of technology, natural evolution of businesses, right? So for those of you who are more, who can look back into the 1960s to 1980s, right? There is this term that is industrial automation or industrial revolution, right? These days are where a lot of factories have started to automate. That means they put in assembly plants, and a lot of these assembly plants don't need too many people to manage it, right? But of course, if you come forward to today, a lot of manufacturing plants are becoming what they call as dark factory. I don't know whether you heard of this word, dark factory. Means there's no human being in the factory itself. The factory run by itself. Why they do use the word dark factory means you can turn off the light. In total darkness, and the machine runs. Because the machine don't need light. They don't need to sight anything. Everything is already pre-programmed, right? So that is where a lot of that's the trend today when it comes to factory. When it comes to office, do you have dark office? That means turn off the light for, in the office and everything still runs? The answer is no, not yet. We have not reached there yet. Yeah? But dark factory, there is. If you go to China, there are quite a few factories out there, or in there, where literally there's no human being, from end to end. Yeah, the human being will just probably just deliver the goods. Even delivery of the goods, a lot of them has been automated to a certain extent. Okay, so moving from industrial automation to business process automation. Process automation that happened in the, I'm getting low far for those of you who know, right? 1900s to year 2000. This is where a lot of organizations started implementing software like the ERPs, right? The order management system, in the logistics system, the supply chain system in organization to help them automate certain business process, right? But still, it's not a fully automated end-to-end office in that sense, but it's termed as business process automation. Then moving on to digital transformation. I'm sure you realize that those days when you have systems, instead of producing less paper, you actually produce more papers. You print out a lot of reports and whatnot, yeah? So over time, then slowly, documents are now being minimized so that you don't need to print out all these documents, as well as it's being digitalized. Digitalized means you can actually use you can use the data a lot more in a meaningful way, rather than storing in the computer, in the printer, or in the printout itself, right? And moving towards to what we call as intelligent enterprises today. These are the general trend of what organizations are facing today. Yeah. So if you look at where we are today, regards to automation, you'll find that more than 50% of the work in the office can be automated. Okay, that's a reality today. And then of which 57%, more than half of the employers globally want to start using automation to improve the performance of their resources, human resources, yeah? And also, of course, the productivity, right? And this will solve a lot of problems, like, for example, releasing the human resources to do what humans do best. That is engagement activity with the clients and whatnot instead of sitting behind the desk. That's one. Second is you find that I'm actually refreshing what we mentioned about earlier in terms of challenges. That's one, right? Second is a lot of these processes can potentially cause costly error. Let me give you an example. You probably have read some of this real life example, but you may not know that it can be solved through automation. Cathay Pacific and Japan Airlines, this I think it was 2-3 years ago, accidentally due to human error, entered the wrong price for their airfares, especially the first class. It was extremely cheap. So there were a lot of people who end up booking really cheap airfare to go around the world. Yeah, this one of the airline, I can't remember which is which, decided to honor it. Another one say no, sorry, too bad. I'm going to cancel your order. You're going to buy a new one with the right price. But can you imagine the goodwill that's lost? Even that, some of them can afford to suffer, to lose the goodwill for a period of time. But imagine another Japanese investment bank. The staff key in the wrong stock price, and the transaction was transacted. They lost millions of dollars. And these are the human error which a lot of organizations may not be able to afford. It's not just about saving or increasing the productivity, it's high cost of error, right? Think about that, okay? So, going down the list again, so a lot of jobs can be automated, right? So that you release the human resources to do other things that's more valuable. And even reporting can easily be done. But if you walk into a lot of organizations these days, there are still a lot of armies of people. Their job is to produce report every single day. The question is, you don't even know whether those reports are being read. But that's a separate point, right? But there's still a lot of effort being placed into that. So in terms of industries where automation can have the most benefit, right? The first that comes to mind is always BFSI, banking, finance, securities, and insurance. Right? Or another term is banking, finance, I think services. Right? And a lot of banks, because of the volume of processes they need to do or transactions that they need to do, they will always, oh, okay, he came back. So spend a lot of resources, a lot of money to automate processes. And telco is another one that is fairly big. And the third one, in no particular order, is logistic. Logistic companies, as you know, deal a lot with authorities like the freight forwarders, the custom, not only in the country where they are in, but the country that they are exporting to. There are a lot of such documents that needs to be, or a lot of compliance that need to do, and all this can actually be done through automation. Okay. So we have done some studies in terms of where the biggest possible benefits of automation. We did this survey across 1,000 over companies in predominantly China, where our company originated from. So typically, finance, they can see they have witnessed more than 50% cost reduction in terms of finance processing. Like for example, as I mentioned, processing of POs, processing of invoices, checking delivery orders, you name it, a lot of these activities can actually be automated. Even HR, a lot of organizations hire by the masses. For example, for those of you who are familiar with business process outsourcing company or outsourcing company, Malaysia is top 3 in the world in terms of outsourcing. Yeah, so they hire by the 50s, by the hundreds every single day to man call centers to do processing on behalf of companies. So all these organizations, when they automate the onboarding, because when they hire so many of them, they need to comply, get their notebook to be issued, password, David was talking about passwords, yeah? All password needs to be issued to all these new members of the organization. All this can be automated. If not, you're going to have armies of HR folks to do all this every single day. Right? in terms of tax, some organization, like for example, India, every single state have their own tax requirements. So for organization that sells across to different states, I'm sure you do if you're in India, when you sell across all the different states, you have different requirements when it comes to tax, right? I know of one company in India that has 150 tax staff alone. This is not finance staff, but tax staff alone because of the requirements that they have to do, yeah? So I won't go through every single detail, but stop short of saying that there are a lot of possible benefits that automation can help organization in different industries. So giving more example, finance. Finance is always the first department that can benefit because of the work, the processes that they have to undergo to help the organization itself. So I talk about reconciliation, bank reconciliation. You can imagine even data entries, as I mentioned, data entries of invoices, of DOs, and even posting of accounting entries can be automated, right? And even, for example, the procurement. Some organizations use a lot of, do a lot of procurement, so they actually use automation to help them to source for suppliers and issue them POs, and then do matching of POs versus DOs and whatnot, right? You be more familiar than I do when it comes to that. And even supply chain, right? You receive an invoice. Do you know whether you have enough raw materials to manufacture the goods that has been issued, the PO has been issued to you, right? You probably have to do it manually, where you receive one big purchase order, then everybody in the organization, of course, other than being jubilant, feeling jubilant, will be start scrambling. Do we have enough raw materials? Can we fulfill this order? And when can we fulfill this order? So the whole armies will be doing that day and night before they are able to tell the CEO, say, yes, we can do it, right? So all this can actually be automated because the robot could help you to link all this processing together. So, very quickly, what is the journey that a typical organization would do towards a successful automation implementation, right? Remember what I said earlier is don't worry about the term hyper-automation, intelligent automation, machine learning and whatnot. Put that aside. You know those technology exist, good enough. Put that aside. It's back to the fundamental business question, what do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? What are your pain points? Start with that, right? There's no one technology that can solve all the problems in the world. There's no silver bullet in that sense. Not even automation, just to set your expectation. Automation is not a silver bullet that can be adopted in every organization to solve all your problems overnight, right? So you need to do research and identify where the pain points are and what is the cause as in what causes the pain point, and what's the cost of the pain point. Some of the pain point may not be worth the effort in terms of solving it through digitalization. So it depends on the impact, right? Remember I talked about cost of error. If there's a process that causes a lot of error all the time due to human error, but to rework it, you just need 1 or 2 people just to do it for 2 days. Let's say, yeah, every month there will be 2 days to do all this correction. Is it worth spending, let's say, lots of money to do the digitalization or automation? Probably not. But the issue that I mentioned about the security firm, the investment bank, right, where one single wrong entry costs the company millions of dollars, yeah, that's where you probably want to spend your money to ensure that those errors are minimized, right? Then to look at the kind of technology that is required or that can help you solve your problem. It may not be automation. It may be automation. It may not be AI that everybody talks about today, right? AI is good in certain things, but it's not a silver bullet, right? Again, back to, I may sound like a broken record, hyper-automation uses a lot of technologies, but don't worry about that. It's more selecting the right technology that will help you to solve your problem. Yeah? And of course, you need to monitor and over time optimize it. What the experience from a lot of organizations when they do automation, we usually, I use the word usually, yeah, advise them to start small, look for area based on pain points. After they automate, over time, don't expect that magic to stay there forever. Business changes over time, yeah? So you need to continue to monitor the solution that you have adopted, the automation that you have adopted, is it still relevant? Because usually you will start with what we call as task automation. Just do data entry for this, for invoices. Just do bank reconciliation. But over time, after you have automated all these tasks, you want to turn it into a process. You want the robot to say, after you have keyed in the purchase order, can you go and check the raw material? Is that enough? Right? And how long would the production take? So this is actually a process, a fulfillment process, but created through multiple tasks. Right? So when you automate the task, it's simple, but when you automate a process, when you link all these things together, it comes with different challenges. Okay? So I won't go into detail, but just bear in mind that you will need to always review what you have done over time, and you may need to change it over time as well to make it continue to be relevant. Then, of course, to expand the automation over time in that sense. Okay? Lastly, I'm mindful of time. We'll leave a lot of discussion to conversation. It's just to share with you the methodology that we use in helping organizations to automate, which mirrors what I've just mentioned earlier in terms of how you do automation. That is, we'll go through what we call process discovery. Right? Sit down with the organization, organize workshop after asking them to focus on identify which are the pain points. We'll have a workshop and understand what the pain points are, and then we decide whether, or we make recommendation whether digitalization or automation can help to solve that pain point. And what would the return on investment be? If they were to spend the money, would that make eliminate the error or reduce the time that's required to process the work by, let's say, 50%, 70%, depending on the scenario itself. Yeah? And towards, we would even do proof of concept because people are still very skeptical. Fair enough, they have not seen the technology before. They don't really know whether technology works in real life. So we actually help them to do some form of proof of concept to show that certain function, the critical function, actually works in their real life before they actually embark on the actual development deployment itself. Okay? I think with that, I'll stop here.
Okay. Hi, my name is Brian. I just make it very simple. What will be the pro and con?
Of what?
This is our system.
Okay. How much time do I have?
I make it very simple.
Okay. I think generally the pros are definitely, as what I've mentioned earlier in the theme, that is to raise the increase the efficiency and the productivity. Right? Efficiency in terms of expediting the process, making the process faster, and productivity in terms of a person can be released off all these mundane jobs, mundane tasks, so that then they can do more higher value work in terms of, let's say, analytical stuff, doing analysis, analytics, as well as customer engagement, right? Where human touches matters the most. That's on the advantageous side. Disadvantage, of course, one of them will be cost. Technology like this doesn't come relatively cheap, right? But of course, there is always the benefit to that. The other one is, as I mentioned, never assume this time of automation to be a silver bullet to solve every single problem that you have in an organization. Yeah, even automation does not automate 100% of your work. Right? Even let's say you have 1,000 transactions that go through the automation, doesn't mean that all 1,000 will go through successfully. You will still need to assign staff to intervene those transactions that fail, right? Because in real life, that's what happened anyway. You have armies of staff who process the documents. There will be some documents that say, hold it, this document, there are some exceptions. What do I do with that? A bot would not be able to think for you, even though if you train them, to a certain extent, yes, but not every single thing, right? So I hope that answers your question. Welcome.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Oh,
Hi, my name is Julia. You know, we always talking about this digitalizing, transforming the workplace. What is the buy-in rate? Let's say you go to the firm, you're trying to, as a consultant, you see the CEO and all this thing. But the minute the staff says, oh, we are going to do this thing, oh, my rice bowl is going to be affected. So there's going to bound to have a lot of resistance from because a lot of these, your discovery factors have to come in from the front line who is doing all these things. So how do you buy in for these people who are so resistant to, because the whole concept of this coming in is that my rice bowl is going to be affected. So do I willingly support digitalization, knowing in advance 2-3 years down the road, I'm become redundant because a lot of the work can be automated, and I may not be able to upscale my skill set, so to speak. So there will be this type of a buy-in. So depending on the age group of the employees that's involved in that area, you know, when the junior staff, that kind of thing, they just, oh, we will do it. But the mid-range, the resistant level, I mean the buy-in can be, so how do you engage that kind of resistance, you know, the buy-in from that point?
Okay, thank you. That's a very relevant question that we face every single day, right? That when we talk to organization, again, there's no one single way of addressing that, but let me give you a few examples. You are right in saying the junior staff, with all due respect to them, are bogged down with all this mundane work, right? And over time, after 6 months, after 9 months, they say, I'm getting out of here. This is way too boring for me, right? And when I make any error, the boss scream at me. But what do you expect me to do? I face the computer 8 hours or 10 hours every single day until my eyes get teary, and I still have to key in all this data into the system itself, right? So the attrition rate goes up. So it goes back to where the pain points are, right? The pain point are the lower value type of work, automated. That's from the company perspective. From the employee perspective, of course, it's not 100%, but who does not want to have higher wages? I'm sure all of us do, right? Except for a few who are earning lots of money, who may not want any more salary increment because it means more work. But what does more work mean? Is it more of the same, right? That means your current job, let's say you're being paid 5,000 to process 500 invoices every single month. In order for you to have your salary increment to 6,000, let's say, you need to process 600 invoices when you're already working on an overnight shift just to make sure you process everything, right? Versus automating all this so that you can do higher value work, contribute more value to the organization to earn your higher salary, right? That's another possibility of looking at it. And why am I saying this is I'm wearing a nationalistic hat as well, right? Grace and I, my team member, we used to serve the government, whereby our task is to create high value jobs. But how do you create high value jobs when your resources, 14 million workforce that we have in Malaysia, are still bogged down with all this low value work, which needs to be done regardless, right? So when you automate a lot of this work, you're releasing them, giving them the opportunity to do higher value work and hence earning higher wages. So that may be a proposition for them is, hey, yes, I want to earn higher wages. I cannot be doing the same thing, right? So I need to automate it. Another statement that you will see a lot these days in terms of job displacement is jobs are not being displaced by robots or even AI. It's being displaced by those human beings or human resources that are using bots and AI to do their work. Right. Okay, I hope that answer your part of your question in that sense.
Thanks, Wee Choong. I want to ask, sometimes we as business people, we want to evaluate the systems, we want to help local companies, but then we don't know how robust or how good the company, what are some of the questions we ask to find out whether are you wasting money doing this automation or the company is also using us, but they can't deliver, you know?
You're talking about the supplier or the vendor?
Yeah.
Okay. I think a very typical approach is always ask for use cases. What use cases have they done? Which company have actually used their services before? And what outcome? Right? And see how do they reply to it. Yes, some companies will have a lot of logos on their presentation slides. Ask them to explain what have they done. Right? Some of them, with all due respect, they may have big telco company logos up there, but they have actually supplied printer. They may have supplied printer toner. Not wrong, it is their client, right? But the work that they have done are very different. So I can't think of any other way other than so-called drilling them, getting them to explain what they have done, and also sometimes ask for reference check. Talk to those companies. It's just like when you hire staff as well, right? Some of them you go through reference check, calling their previous employer, asking them, and of course the way you ask the question to their previous employer also need to make a lot of sense as well, so that you can detect whether those are scripted answers or they are real answers. So you just need to probe and probe and probe until you feel comfortable. And another one is what I've mentioned earlier, do proof of concept. Ask them to show it to you in real life. Of course, they won't show the whole thing. We don't do that for organization as well, admittedly, right? If the organization need a process end-to-end, let's say if it's a 5-step process, we will identify 2 or 3 and agree with them and say we will show this 2 or 3. Because if you're to do end-to-end, it's literally doing a whole project for free for them, right? So proof of concept is also another important way of doing it.
Okay, any more questions? Yes.
Hi. So this is a hypothetical question.
Can you introduce your name first?
Yes, I'm Song, S-O-N-G. Yeah. Assuming I'm a data processing staff, right? And with the help with the bots as my tools, right? So now I'm able to process, let's say, 1,000 data a day. So with that tool, then I'm expected to process 2,000 a day. It actually increased my workload than to reduce my workload. So if this is a scenario, right, as an employee, I don't think I would like to have more involvement with more advanced technology, because that will only increase my workloads. So with that, right, what's the chance, right, the bots can actually really replace the really, is that what you say, low quality job? It's not term. What was the term again?
Low value jobs?
Yes, low value job. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, I'm just trying to understand your question. So with automation, you are able to now process 1,000, let's say hypothetically 1,000, and prior to automation, it was probably much lower than that. And with automation increased to 1,000, and the company is now expecting you to produce 2,000. I'm trying to see whether that's realistic in that sense. Of course, bosses can be demanding, right? So depending on your discussion with them, you prove that the technology can help you to produce 1,000. Yeah, you want 2,000, just multiply the technology by 2, right? Because, for example, manually you can process 200, for example, right? With automation, you can now process 1,000, right? So with you using the bot to run 1,000 processes, to process 1,000 transactions, and on top of that, you supplement it using manual work of yours, you're producing 1,200. So it's impossible to do 2,000, right? So, but should you actually be doing the manual work of the other 200? You shouldn't. That's where the multiplication of the technology comes into the picture. I don't know whether I answered your question from that perspective.
Yeah. If the bot can replace my job,
Mm.
then I won't be needed, right? So in order to prove my value, that I need to show the employer that there are still certain things that I need to hands on.
Yes.
Yeah. To
Yep.
prove that, then maybe they will have more expectation on that.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned earlier. First of all, for you to let's say earn a higher salary, do you do more of the same and say, hey boss, I used to process 1,000 transactions, now I'm able to process 2,000, so increase my salary. Is it more of the same? Or you said all these are now being automated, but remember what I said, it's not a silver bullet. There will still be transaction which you will need human intervention. But at least those that does not need human intervention is already processed, right? While you focus on processing those that need a lot more problem-solving skill or analytics, right? Instead of just processing, you say, hey, boss, now I know what I'm processing, right? The computer tells me out of the 2,000 or 1,000, 700 are, let's say, doing this, and do the analysis, which is a lot more value to a lot of organizations these days. That is information.
Okay, so we have a lot of questions in terms of how the adoptions of technologies like automations, AI, and things like that. So I'm just want to ask, from an individual perspective, working in organizations, there are some things that we can't control, right? The tools, the work tools that we are given, it depends on the companies, especially the IT department, whether they allow you to use certain things or not. But as an individual, recognizing that the current job that we are doing may eventually be replaced, right, for obvious reasons, how then, as an individual, can I, on my own accord, pivot myself to a higher value kind of skill? What can I do as an individual?
Okay, there are a lot of, while there would be definitely be restriction in terms of the tools that you can use in an organization, for obvious reason, security, right? And also they would not want the staff to be spending their time doing training themselves while they should be actually be working, again for obvious reason, right? A lot of these tools are still available online, right? Whether it's in YouTube, you can go and search YouTube. There are a lot of courses up there, free of charge. And also even there are structured courses that you can actually subscribe for free of charge on the internet, right? Depending on what you want to learn. Some of the employees will want to go into actual development, that means programming. Some of them want to, for obvious reason, want to use ChatGPT more, right? And there is a skill that you need to learn for you to use ChatGPT productively. I'm definitely not one of them. I should, right? But this is what they call as prompt engineering. Do you know how to prompt on all these AI platforms so that you can get the right answers, right? And that is very, very important skill set that people are actually looking into right now.
Absolutely, right? So what you're saying is that the resources are available online on YouTube, right? And if you were to invest a little bit more money in terms of subscription, there are structured courses, right? That's
Or
available.
even free.
Or even free.
Yeah, some of the structured courses are actually provided free. Of course, those are basic elementary stuff. And once you have learned up and you want to do more, then you probably have to pay for more advanced courses.
Yeah,
But a lot of them are very affordable because it's actually done over internet. So it's very low cost for them. Right? Once they have developed the courses, it literally sunk costs for them in that sense.
It seems to me that it's no choice right now that for survival's sake, right? We got to upskill ourselves, right? With all these technologies. Whilst we don't know how to code, but we know the linguistic part of it, right? How to prompt as a natural language conversations with the AI, right? Yeah. Any more questions before we have 57 more seconds, right? No, actually, we have overrun by 1 minute. One last question. Yes, sir. Can you introduce your name and ask a question? The mic's handed to you.
I'm Tang here. I'm going to be very frank. if they somehow have needs for this kind of solution for some small matters or some simple tasks, what would be the cost for these small companies to adopt these kind of solutions? Is it going to be very costly, or is the current target consumer for this kind of AI solution is only mainly target for big corporations, or is it small corporations is too expensive for small corporations to pay them?
Okay, very good question. In fact, with or without AI, that has been a question for a lot of smaller organizations. Yeah, for obvious reason, because it's still business. A lot of tech companies, when they start off, they would aim for a big organization, right? You want to sell big anyway, right? That's where the big revenue comes in. But you will find that these days there are a lot of organizations that are developing solutions that are meant more for smaller organizations, so that they can actually subscribe over cloud. For some of those of you who are a bit more familiar with IT, yeah, they subscribe over cloud. So what that means are, first of all, you don't need to have your own infra too much other than PCs. That's one. Which organization doesn't have PCs anyway these days, right? That's one. Second is you cannot, to a certain extent, customize the software to your own need. But a lot of smaller organizations, you don't need to customize, right? You just need, like what you say, solve small problem. It goes back to what I was saying earlier. What would your pain points be? Don't digitalize just because your neighbor is digitalizing. They are digitalizing to solve a certain problem. Do you have the same problem? If you don't, you have other problems. Focus on solving that problem, right? So there are a lot of cloud applications out there who are designed to solve very specific problem for even smaller organizations, right? They are actually mushrooming now, right? It's just like, if I can just take another few seconds to digress a bit, but it's the same concept. Those days, 20 years ago, you don't have AirAsia. Not everybody can fly, right? But AirAsia fulfilled the dream of everyone can fly because it made it cheaper. You will see that same trend for IT as well. Some IT company will say, there's a big market with all these SMEs. Let me find a solution to help them solve because I'm going for the masses, right? Big volume, not big value in that sense. It's still business.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's give a big round of applause to Mr. Hew. Thank you so much.